Hi, I'm Carl Lewis, and I'm from the United States. And I guess my biggest accomplishment was being named IOC and World Athletics Athlete of the Century. All right, here you go. Okay. Well, this is probably the signature race that I had in my career, the 1991 World Championship 100 meters. What brings into it is that Leroy Burrell, who is my very, very good friend even to this day, and my teammate was 6 years younger than me. So the dynamic in my thing is that I just turned 30 years old, and obviously as a sprinter, that just wasn't really heard of. And so Leroy had been consistently beating me recently, and I remember leaving Europe early, came back to focus on this meet alone. And as we see Ben there, serving a suspension. Anyway, so, but it was an interesting day. I felt like I had a great shot. Whenever I run a competition like this, my objective is to run fast heats. So I trained as a long jumper and a sprinter, obviously. But I did both workouts. Instead of just doing one day for each, I did both workouts. So I was very strong. And so here, for me, it wasn't about where I was in the race. It was about how I ran the race. So I would usually know at about 10 meters, based on what I did out of the blocks, how the race would go. So if you watch it as you see it, I'm way in the back out of the blocks. And one thing I'd always do is I would stop and focus on the elements. That's why I put my hand on my knee. And generally I was the last person to go down because it was a technical thing for me. So I remember clearly when the blocks went off, I felt good at the start. And then right about 10 meters I was behind, but I said, I think I have it. Even though I was behind, because it was the kind of start I wanted to have. And I just stayed in my race. And honestly, I knew that Leroy was going to be there, and that's why I took that little bit of a look at the end to say, did I clear him? Because Christie is a big guy, and I just got by Christie at about 90 meters. And really, the thing about it is that I'd gone my whole career, I dealt with the 100 meters, because it wasn't my best event, and it wasn't my number one event. It was the added event. I was a long jumper. But the big thing is that I finally was able to break the world record and win the race on the track, because with Ben around, I'd set numerous world records, but never because he was around. So that's what it was. And when you're 30 years old and you don't know, it's unprecedented to be in that space, you don't know what's going to happen. So it was very, very rewarding. It was incredible. It was an incredible race. And I knew that that was the race I wanted to run, which doesn't happen a lot because most athletes are not perfect. But that was probably as good a race I could have run. Although now, years later, I see mistakes out of the blocks. I could have reacted better, I could have pushed a little longer, but it was just an incredible time. And I look at this from time to time because people bring that up. And just to think now, looking back about how Leroy felt, because he'd won every race, and then bam, the biggest one was there. But it's just there's no way I could have done it without him and my Santa Monica teammates. And this victory lap is something that's incredible because it just felt electric. And I just don't know how you can describe what it felt like to be in that stadium that day. You run the race of your life, you run the best race, you set the world record. And it was my first event. I still had the long jump to come. And so it was just an incredible race for me. I see a couple of mistakes, and then when I look back at it here, you see I didn't push as much as I could on the first step, but I still pushed well. But I thought I could have pushed more. But right here, I'm behind, but I'm not losing ground. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to come. That's why I had the confidence. Because the thing is that in 100 meters, you can only run full speed for 10 meters. So 90% of the race is speeding up and slowing down. And so if you know how to manage that 90%, then you're going to win the race, especially when everyone is so close. So I wasn't as worried about being that far back because I knew that a lot of them got out really hard based on what I felt. So if you see the reaction, they're gone and they're really working hard to get back. But my strides are big, long, they're not as quick. But one thing you can see on here, you see how the box flipped? That means how much I pushed off the blocks. And I knew that was a big thing I had not been doing, really pushing off both blocks. So you see the back pedal really pop, and that was why I felt very confident. And as you see, even for Linford, who's taller than me, my stride is longer because I'm really pushing and creating the momentum is what I wanted to do. It really wasn't about turning over to get fast. It was about creating momentum so that I could have that momentum to finish the race at the end. So that first 10 meters, what I always tell sprinters, is what's going to get your last 10 meters. And so My first 10 meters is what I wanted, and it gave me what I needed my last 10. But incredible race for me. A signature race for, and to again have all of my personal bests at World Championships or the Olympics, and the biggest meets, just it's a testament to the hard work. But bigger thing is my coach. My coach always had me ready, and always prepared to be my absolute best when it happened, and that's it. And you can see I stayed pretty relaxed here, and something I always tell the kids, right there I feel like I've got it. See the difference in my face, saying, did I get past Leroy? That's the only thing I'm thinking. Did I see there? Yeah, I did got him. And that was just kind of the end of it. The only thing is that I felt really confident all the way, and I said, it's amazing. And then to turn around and see the world record, as you see, the clock was behind us. So what we did is that when you crossed the line, the first thing you did is look back. But you see here, again, the turnover is slower. And Leroy and I are pretty similar, whereas you see the others are turning over a lot faster. And that's what you have to do in order to have that momentum at the end. And then eventually our strides match. And then they start, because theirs start to fade, but they match because I'm still pushing. And that's the difference. I think the difference of the race was the first 10 meters, which gave me my last 10 meters.
I think it tells you whatever they're using on this track.
And we've seen it from all different angles, but as you can see here, I'm just in the air. Leroy and I are similar. We're in the air longer than anyone else because we're pushing longer and we're not turning over as much. And see, that's the key, to continue to push, just like if you're pushing something heavy, you want to do it. And then, like I said earlier, I was running and I knew no matter what, Leroy was going to be there. And so therefore I had to clear Christie to make sure that I got past him. But this was just an incredible time, an incredible race. And as we know, my father passed away a couple of years earlier, and so that was still a very important part of my life because of how important he was. And just to have this great race at that time, at 30 years old, when no one had thought it could be done again, and not having been number one in the world the last 2 years, to pull that out at that day was just great. I need the big meets to run the big races, and this was the biggest meet and the biggest race, and still probably a top 3 race of all time to this day, more than 30 years later.
Pity Linford didn't get a bronze for that, didn't it? Hey?
It went true to form again between.
I don't know what else to say. Well, one more thing I can say is Dennis jumped, and he knows it. Dennis false started. He got away with it. I've never seen that angle. Wow. Yeah, see, that's an interesting angle from behind, because you could see when you cross the line, the first thing everyone does, they look back at the clock and get it. And that's a pretty neat angle. I've never seen that. I remember that my mother was sitting next to Leroy's mother, and we lost her last year. What year? Yeah, last year. And then when I see videos, sometimes I just see her happy. When she was older, she was great, but still it wasn't that. And so the great thing about all of this is I can still see her from time to time when she was her happiest. I can see Mom happy, Let me turn the sound down. And, the sports, it just brings so many things in your life that people don't think about. It brings sports, competition, family, emotion. It's just so many things that, I wouldn't say people don't understand, but they don't see. And so we get so caught up oftentimes in thinking about money and how it affects people. But I tell you one thing, I was definitely about getting paid. But when I was on this track, that's never crosses your mind. And it's just the work and the time and the energy, and then your teammates, your family, your friends. But in that moment, and then you have those special moments like when you can see how happy your family is, because being a parent and a grandparent, it's a lot to put in to have kids. It's a lot of energy, and just sit there and just look at your children and say, wow, I'm just so proud of them. That's an amazing thing, as a child to experience and to watch the joy that they get because it's so hard. They work so hard, and you look back and you think like, Dad used to work at that Walgreens at night. And I was like, why is he working this Walgreens? But you realize because we needed the money, but you don't know that as a kid. And then you think that they're at this, then they're sitting here watching this thing and they're saying, that's my baby, that little goofball that I had to go to Walgreens to work for. It's really pretty amazing. Yep. So that's it. Couldn't have been happier. So that's it.